Hello and welcome Cross Assembly family to the latest installment of our Groups 242 series. This series is where we 1. Gather in Christian community, just like you're doing now. 2. Grow and build each other up as disciples of Jesus Christ. And 3. Serve by sending out Spirit-filled agents for local and global transformation. Thank you for joining us and for living the calling of Acts 2:42. I pray that you too are filled with the awe at the miracles that God is doing in your community. All right, that's enough of me. Let's turn it over for today's teaching.
Hey, I was asked to talk about serving the kingdom. How many people know that there is no defense against sacrifice? And here's what I mean. There's a guy who was giving a testimony one time about him giving his life to the Lord. And the story he shared, and I'd seen the testimony myself directly, was that he lived in a neighborhood where he had a neighbor that he knew was a Christian. And he said he didn't like him because he was a Christian. And he said he and the other neighbors would often make fun of him. And he said, I got injured at work and had to have a procedure. And as a result, I was bedridden for several months. And he said, I was able to kind of hobble around, but I couldn't move much. And he said, I was home one day, and he said, I heard somebody out in my yard mowing my lawn. And he said, I didn't know who it was, so he said, I went out to the front, made myself out to the front step, and discovered this neighbor I did not like, this neighbor I had ridiculed, this neighbor that knew I didn't like him, who was a Christian, was mowing my lawn. And he said, I started to curse him out and tell him he was to get off my property, and he said he refused and said, look, you're laid up. You can't mow your lawn, and I'm going to mow your lawn for you no matter what you say. So he said, I was mad. I went back in my house, in the door. I couldn't do anything about it, and I didn't want to call the police, so I let the guy mow my lawn. And he said he did it for weeks. He mowed my lawn. And then he said one day he came by my house, and he said, listen, I'm going to be out of town. And at that point, he said, I warmed up to him a little bit, but he thought, see, here's the catch. He wants something from me. And he said, I just want you to know that while I'm away, my son will come over and mow the lawn for you while I'm gone. He said, I am now a follower of Christ because I had a neighbor who mowed my lawn despite my objections to him. You know, when we talk about acts of service, we're talking about doing something as unto the Lord, right? Not to people, not to individuals, and not for ourselves, but unto the Lord. If you've got your Bibles, I'd love you to turn with me to Matthew chapter 5, and I'm going to be reading in verse 13. And it is Jesus, it's the Sermon on the Mount, and he says this in verse 13 of Matthew 5, you are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? Now, I'm going to stop for a moment on that for a little bit. I've never in my life had bad salt. I'm sure somewhere in the world it exists, but I've never understood this passage. I've never been at a restaurant, never been to somebody's house, shaken salt on my eggs and went, oh man, this salt went bad, right? Anybody relate to that? Well, in the times of Christ, they didn't have the purification process that we have today with salt. And so if you've ever made homemade ice cream with rock salt, anybody ever done that before? Okay. The salt of Jesus' day was a little bit, it wasn't quite rock salt, but it was a little bit more like that. It was unprocessed. And what could happen is the sodium chloride, which is the actual chemical element that makes it salt, could leach out of the mineral. And so what would happen is instead of having a handful of salt, you just had a handful of rocks. And literally, Jesus went on to say, it is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. What he meant was that's literally what they did with it. They didn't have sidewalks that were paved. And so what did you do with useless salt? You threw it out in a muddy patch. And he says that we are the salt of the earth, and salt is only effective if it's genuine, right? If it's real. And he's saying if you are a real and committed follower of Christ, anything you touch, like what salt touches, salt preserves, it brings flavor, it heals, it melts, does all these things. Anything it comes in contact with, it changes because it's real. Jesus says that acts of service, right, are a part of us being real to the world, because he goes on to say this, You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. That's from the ESV. The Message version, don't use that as your sole study Bible, but the Message version says, we're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep an open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. We are called to exhibit Christ in the way that we serve. Quite simply stated, if you're a note taker, write this very simple statement down. What we do matters. What we do matters. It is not a matter of our salvation, right? Because we are saved by faith in Christ, and it itself, Ephesians 2:10 says it is a gift. It is a matter of our sanctification, becoming like Jesus. What we do matters, not a matter of our salvation. It is a matter of our sanctification, because people watch what we do more than hear what we say. People watch what we do more than hear what we say. Now, Pastor Chad often says, and I would completely agree with him, that we need to be verbal about the gospel. So nothing I'm saying tonight is saying, well, just do this and never talk to somebody about the Lord. No, but there are moments that God has called us to serve, and it's one of the values in groups is to serve, because what we do to others matters. Jesus himself said, by this all men will know that you are my disciples if you have what for one another? Love, right? He didn't say if you do miracles or if you have a big church. He said, how you treat one another is the evidence that others will say, wow, those people really are genuine followers of Christ. What we do matters, and we will be judged by our actions. I really get upset when I hear people say, are you judging me? Yes. Because Paul writes to the church and he says, absolutely, I will judge my brother or sister. Now, somebody who isn't in the faith, I won't judge because they've not agreed to the standard of Christ in their life, right? Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, and Corinth was a crazy mixed up town. It was the Las Vegas of its day. He said, according to the grace of God given to me, and this is 1 Corinthians 3, verse 10, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, meaning he came into Corinth and he brought the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? The gospel was what the foundation was. And someone else is building upon it. He's writing to them and saying, I came in, I established this work with the gospel, and someone else is building on it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. You're saying you're not laying a new foundation. You're not starting over and putting a new foundation on your home. He says that was laid. That's in Christ. So our salvation, right, is assured in Christ. Our place in eternity is assured in Christ. Our forgiveness is assured in Christ, not by what we do, by what he has done. But then he says, now if anyone builds on the foundation of the gospel in your life, the foundation of the gospel in my life, if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest. It will become known. For the day, we'll just close it, the day of judgment. He's talking about the day, the great white throne room judgment day. Because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. The reward is not eternity. The reward is not heaven. I believe the reward is responsibilities that God's going to give us in eternity. If anyone's work is burned up, he or she will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. What Paul is saying is, I brought you the gospel. Your salvation is assured in what Christ has done, but you need to build upon it with your life. And some will build well, and some will not. What we do matters, and we will be judged by our actions, right? I think finally, or not finally, another thought to share is, and if you're taking notes, I'd love you to write this down, is we should not be frugal with our lives. We should not be stingy with our lives. Now, I've been happily married for over 27 years, and one of the secrets to my marriage is I stink at managing money, right? Stink at it. And so early on, I gave it all to the wife. People ask me how much money I have. I literally don't have any idea at all. Like, she just takes care of it, right? Because I'm not real smart with money. If I have it, I spend it, so I just give it to somebody else who can take care of it, right? Well, we should not be frugal or stingy with our lives. The goal of our life is not to keep it in mint condition. I love classic cars. That's one of my things. I'd love to own a classic car one day. Don't ask me why I'd love to own one. I'm sure if I owned it, I'd regret having it, but I'd love to have one. There's a guy in the church invited me and my son Isaac to a classic car auction. We went to this auction, and in fact, I have this really cool photo of Isaac sitting in a 1956 Cadillac Eldorado convertible. It was beautiful. If I had known how much it was going to sell for, which was $280,000 later, I would have never let him sit in the car. But we took a photo of the car, and it sold for so much money because it was original, it was unrestored, it had hardly been driven. Now, if I could take you out to my car, I have a key right here on it. This key is to my 2006 Mazda 3. It is not in mint condition. I have a scratch on the hood where my sons found a broken badminton handle that I had thrown away twice, and they dug it out twice, where he was learning his letters, and he carved his name in the paint. It's still there. I can show it to you. Across the thing. It has 283,000 miles. People say, are you going to replace it? No, I have 2 kids in college. I'm just praying it'll keep going, right? But hear me out. I think the Lord would rather have us live our life like my beat-up Mazda 3 than he would like a mint-condition Cadillac. Because he didn't give us our gifts and our talents and our time to leave them in showroom quality. He said we should take our gifts and abilities and use them for the Lord, right? It's a part of the privilege of being a part of the body of Christ. And some of the happiest people I know are people that learn the secret that it's better to give than to receive. What we do matters. We will be judged by our actions. We should not be frugal with our lives. I love what Jesus said in Luke 9. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world or loses or forfeits himself? You can save your whole life and lose it. So when we become followers of Christ, we have a new identity that happens. And it takes time, but you ever been around somebody? I was with someone my wife and I went away to a minister's retreat, and my wife said, oh, that's the daughter of so-and-so that we knew. I had never met the daughter, and this daughter was in her late 20s. She was up on a platform playing the keyboard. And I could tell it was her daughter because of the way she looked, but also she had a similar, I can't even do it, facial expression exactly like her mom's. Does that make sense? Like you could tell that was her daughter. My hope is that in my life, and I'm sure you feel this way about yours, that the more I live and the longer I live, I'm hoping that people will look at Chris Connell and go, oh, look, he acts just like his father, right? My heavenly Father. He reflects Christ. One of the ways we reflect Christ is by what we do for others. See, life is better when we give than when we merely receive. It is more blessed to give than to receive. There's a parable in Scripture of the talents. Many years ago, I had finished Bible college, and when I was in Bible college, I had been front row center to a really, 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 really bad church split. It was nasty, it was mean, it was ugly, it was terrible. And I had not grown up in the ministry. I grew up in the church, but not in the ministry. And I decided one day that I would finish my Bible college degree. Didn't make a lot of sense, but this is what I decided. Because I had told the Lord I'd go to Bible college because I felt called to ministry. But because of what I had seen and experienced personally and in real time with this really ugly church split, I decided I was not going to go into ministry. I decided that I knew better what was for my life than the Lord did. So I didn't do anything crazy rebellious. I just finished my Bible college degree and I went home. And I was miserable. I was probably never been miserable my entire life. I was miserable. I just decided I would figure out something else to do. Now, I knew the Lord had called me, but I decided I wanted nothing to do with that because of what I had experienced. And then one day, about 2 or 3 in the morning, you ever been so miserable you just can't sleep? I had one of those nights when I was just so miserable about where I was and what I was doing with my life that I just literally got up and went downstairs to my parents' living room because I was living with them, so that was really cool. You know, I was living with them, sharing a bedroom with my 12-year-old brother, even cooler. And the girl I was eventually married broke up with me because she told me, you need to get your life right with God, then call me. So anyway, yeah, she's always been right, and she still is. And so I laid my face, nose in that carpet, and I just laid there and it was silent. And you ever hear the voice of the Lord speak in your inner man? It's like louder than it was audible. I just heard a voice and it said to me, Chris, do you want to be like the one who buried his talent? And I knew what that meant. Because in that parable, the one who buried his talent, which a talent was about 100 to 150 pounds of silver or gold. It was a 1 year of investment, and these servants, really doulos, slaves, were responsible to run the owner's business and make profit from what he'd given them. But this one guy decided to close up shop and hide the talent, right? And it says that the master came in Matthew 24. And in verse 26, he said, you wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given. And I think that's a part of eternity. And he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I knew the Lord loved me enough to say to me, Chris, you can live your life and not do what I've called you to do, and you'll still go with me in eternity, but you'll have wasted your life because you haven't been obedient. So I say all that to say is that we don't want to get into a works theology. Okay, we don't want to get into this kind of mindset where we say, okay, if I go to church more, God will love me more. No, I'll love you more, Pastor, I'll love you more. We won't love you more, right? I mean, God's not going to love you more, right? Or if I give more money, God's going to love me more. Or if I spend more time doing these things. None of that is true because the Father sent his Son to die for us while we were still sinners, while we were unqualified, right? And while we were unforgiven and while we were reprobate and away from him, he paid the price. So we're not saved because of what we do. So why do it? Because when we become followers of Christ, we die to ourselves and we submit our lives to the leadership of God. And now we're under his authority. So he's now our master. He's our leader. He's our savior. And we do what he says. And it's also an act of worship. We get to. We don't have to do these things so we get approval. We do them because we're already approved. So when we take our time and our gifts and our talents and we invest them in others, it reflects Christ. What we do matters. We will be judged by our actions. We should not be frugal with our lives. Life is better when we give more than when we merely receive, and a life saved is a life wasted.
All right, Cross family, what did you think of that teaching? Were you all in or did it raise some questions? Well, now it's time to flesh all that out through fellowship and discussion. I'll leave you in the good and capable hands of your leaders and hope to see you at our next 242 series. Love y'all and God bless.